everyone. Today I thought we'd do a British political parties tier list. So, let's start off with the Conservative Party. Now, I think we all know where this is going, which is the very bottom. I mean, there's really no redeeming factors of the Conservative Party. Even if we ignore the past, there still really isn't any redeeming factors of the Conservative Party. I mean, 15 years of austerity, the Boris wave, just rubbish. I mean, no one likes them, right? Even the centre, left, right. No one likes these guys. The party's over. Kevin Badnock's irrelevant. The only slightly relevant person who's even in the Conservatives anymore is Jacob Rees-Mogg, who I don't really know what Jacob Rees-Mogg's doing. He's not gone to reform, unlike all the others, which we'll be getting onto later. But generally, there's really not many redeeming factors. I don't think I need to speak about this for very long. Okay, next up we've got Labour. Now, Labour, I'm thinking of actually putting a bit higher than the Conservatives, maybe C. Don't get me wrong, I don't really actively like Labour, but one thing Labour have done well is that they aren't completely crashing the country. I know that obviously if you're online and maybe you don't live in Britain, you might from the media assume that the country is collapsing daily. But actually, Labour, they haven't done exceptionally well, but they have just kind of made things only very slightly worse. For example, they've slightly lowered immigration. Their budget was okay. Their budget wasn't amazing. The two-child benefit cap and they froze something. I can't remember what they froze. Generally, though, the Labour government, beyond Mandelson scandal, which kind of isn't anything to do with the government itself, it's just really embarrassing for the party. Tony Blair, obviously, Iraq. The party's not got the best history, and obviously this whole Mandelson stuff. Generally, the party's not exceptionally good. They're slightly better than the Conservatives, but they're really not much better. So they'll go in C. Next up, we've got Plaid Cymru. Now, Plaid Cymru are going to be going in B. Plaid Cymru do seem to have a direction. We know what they want. We know what they stand for, which is strong Welsh culture, not really independence, but just strong pushing of the Welsh identity and trying to rebuild their culture, which I personally think is quite good. They've really pushed getting the language back. Obviously, you can see with the word Cymru implied being in their name. We've not done the Northern Irish parties because there's like 6 of them and I don't really know what any of them stand for. But Plaid Cymru have done quite well. They're a centre-left nationalist party. I can't really complain about very much that they've done. Obviously, they're not English. I don't live in Wales. I live in England, so I don't really have any connection to them, so I'm not really sure how they run. But they're probably better than Labour. Obviously, if you looked at the by-election in Caerphilly, they won. They are very popular in Wales. And they do seem to be giving people what they want. And I think they are slightly improving the country. It is nice to go there and see the language. Even though they'll all actually still speak English, it's very nice to see the language there, to know that they're trying their best to rebuild their identity. Okay, next up, we've got Restore Britain. Now, Restore, we're just going to be putting an S tier. Very simple. We all know why. Even people on the left think this party is better than Reform. Generally speaking, the reason that Restore is so popular is because Restore appeals to a large amount of Reform and the Conservatives' bases, also appeals to lots of people that didn't vote. Restore if you ignore the fact that Nigel Farage is not in Restore, politically speaking, they're actually a lot more aligned with a lot of Reform's base than Reform would like to think. That's why I do think Reform might have trouble. As a lot of people say, Nigel Farage's parties poll very well and then they die before the next election. We'll see the same with the next 2 parties. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, though, if this time they do peak and then they do slowly start decreasing, except votes go to Restore instead of the Conservatives and Labour. A lot of people know what Restore stand for. They're very principled. We know they stand for low immigration. They stand for a slight decrease in the welfare state, less benefit spending, slight cutting taxes, but they're not like hard right economically, which Reform are. Reform are trying to campaign themselves as a party of business, whilst Restore are kind of a party of the people, except they're obviously a right-wing party of the people, but they're still a party of the people to an extent. Like, I'm sure if you completely cut the immigration stuff, they could theoretically fit more with left-wing economics, because they do want what's best for their people. Which, you got to respect them for it. And obviously them and the Green Party both kind of have the same goal, which is improving the country for the people that live in it. They just have different ways of getting there. Obviously, Restore are also going to get rid of hosepipe bans, which is very, very nice for those of which are involved. I know it's a very small amount of people, but it's going to be an absolute lifesaver. But I think Restore brought a lot of hope for people. A lot of people like Rupert Lowe. I know that obviously Rupert Lowe is very overly represented on social media because people in America really like him, right? I know that there's polls which like only 10% of the population know who he is, which to an extent is true. I do think he'll probably get more famous because obviously 70,000 members is quite a lot. And the party is growing. The party is growing and it is a popular party. You can't really complain about that. So I do think this is going to be an important party. And I think they're pretty good. I think people know what they stand for. And I don't think they'll crash the country. Even if their policies don't work, I don't think it'll ruin the country, if you know what I mean. It's like what they want to do is very reversible, unlike what some of the parties here want to do. Okay, next up we've got UKIP. Now this is Nick Tenkoni. Now UKIP are kind of irrelevant, so I was thinking of putting them just slightly ahead of Labour. I don't know. Nick Tenkoni is not very marketable. UKIP are kind of doing the whole Turning Point UK thing, where they've somehow gotten control of Turning Point UK, and they're kind of trying to use it to grow their audience. But no one knows who they are. Everyone thinks that UKIP's over. Nick Tenkoni has a small online following, but it's really nothing on, Rupert Lowe. Nick Tenkoni is also Italian, which is kind of a bit of a problem for what he's trying to do. Also, I mean, the main issue with UKIP is that it's over, right? Everyone knows that UKIP was Nigel Farage, and now that Nigel Farage has left, and they've been through successive leaders, it's just, it's the advertising is over. And I think for that reason, UKIP definitely just belongs in C. They're not going to get many votes. They're a Christian nationalist party. They've got the Father Calvin Robinson guy. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure these guys, they believe what they want to believe. Except the problem is this isn't that popular. I know that we are, to an extent, a Christian country. But also, we aren't that Christian of a country. The Church of England, what's it called? Congregation is only about 600,000. And quite a lot of that are immigrants as well, which a lot of people don't want to admit for some reason. So, I mean, I think we do like Christian values in this country. Everyone celebrates Christmas in this country. People celebrate Easter in this country as well, which is a very Christian celebration. People do Lent as well. We're very nominally Christian in the sense that people like to say that they're Christian, maybe go to church on Christmas, and maybe once a year when they feel kind of bad or they did something guilty. But they're not that Christian. And I think that's the issue. UKIP are kind of running on Christian nationalism and restoring Christianity at the centre of the government. And that's just not that popular of an opinion, unfortunately, for them. So, yeah. Next up, we've got Reform. Now, Reform, we're going to put B, behind Plaid Cymru. Reform are a party of business, is what I think people are starting to realise. Reform are not a populist party in the same way that Restore are. Reform do not really want what's best for the people. Reform wants what's best for business. Reform are a money-driven party that want to boost the economy of the country and grow our country through business, which, to an extent, is kind of what the Conservatives are trying to do. And I think that's what a lot of people are very dubious about Farage for. Does he actually just want the money? Because Reform, you see the Britannica card, the fact they're not actually that anti-immigration, they're very insistent on paying taxes. And I mean, I personally have a vendetta against the NHS, but I know a lot of people like the NHS, so I'm not going to come out here and say getting rid of the NHS is a good proposal. But I think Reform do just want to transform Britain into being more of an American country, in the idea that they want small government, less taxes, and maybe get rid of the healthcare system and some stuff. But the issue is that we're not that country, and we can't be that country because we're not part of it. We have high taxes. That's the way we are. If you want to cut taxes by 40%, if you want to get rid of income tax or cut income tax 13%, they're going to struggle. And the change is going to be very difficult. And do I think that they could ruin the country? In a worst case scenario, that they're really reckless, they do some Liz Truss style budgets that don't work, maybe they scrap the NHS in a really poor way, they could ruin the country. But I think what's most likely is they get in and we do just get maybe a slightly more right-wing Conservatives, because they know that people are more right-wing now. They know that, the extremes are going. But I think they are more of a party of business than of the people, unlike Restore. Okay, next up we've got the Socialist Workers' Party. Now, I don't know that much about the Socialist Workers' Party, but I'm going to put them behind UKIP ahead of Labour. Socialist Workers' Party are led by George Galloway, and they're supposed to be a Socialist Workers' Party. Now, this is the party that always seems to get like 3 or 4% in every constituency. Except they have no MPs. They have a few councillors. Basically, they're led by George Galloway, except they're also really insistent on Gaza, which is a big issue within the left-wing parties. We've got a lot more left-wing parties to come up, by the way. Generally speaking, the Socialist Workers' Party, they use their demonstrations in the same way that UKIP does. They like to just go out and complain all the time. They're protesting outside the Your Party conference, you know. And I think they have the best ideas in mind. They do want, you know, better workers' rights. But again, they're having the same issue with a lot of these other leftist parties, which is that half their fan base is really hardcore traditional leftists who want unionization, higher taxes on the rich, better workers' rights, maybe even a 4-day work week. Who are very principled. But then you also have a lot of people who are maybe, you know, migrants or who have rich families or something who are workers, who actually just want a virtue signal. Or they only care about immigration in Gaza, which is a big problem because there's about 6 or 7% of the population who will basically just vote purely on Gaza. And so obviously all these left-wing parties have to involve themselves with Gaza because it's a very profitable thing to do. In the same way that every party, by the way, you know, leads themselves towards pensions. No parties here are talking about getting rid of the triple lock, to my knowledge. I don't think any of them are. None of them are talking about getting rid of all these benefits that pensioners have because they're a bigger voting bloc. And in the same way that for these left-wing parties, they have to be pro-Gaza because it's a big voting bloc that will vote for them. Except they don't agree with them on a lot of these rights. So it kind of makes a weird structure. And I think the Socialist Workers' Party has this as the big problem, a lot more than maybe a couple of these other ones which are coming up later. Because the Socialist Workers' Party know that they're a very fringe party. They're not that popular. And so they kind of have to go to these extremes, which is starting to work against them. Okay, next up we've got the Green Party. Now, I'm very split because I want to like the Green Party. That's the thing. I want to like the Green Party. But it's so hard. Because my family votes Green. I can't vote yet. I will vote in the next election. Or I can now, but I couldn't vote in the last election. And I probably would have voted Green. And I do like the idea of the Green Party. I do. I like the idea of some of their policies. You know, I don't mind paying slightly more tax if it means that I get clean roads, you know, clean public transport, maybe slightly more police, slightly better prisons, maybe, I don't know, just better NHS, you know, doctors get more money, higher paid teachers, better education. You know, not just right-wing things like policing and stuff, but, you know, I would not mind paying more money in taxes if I saw results in that. Like, for example, in Moscow, they have loads of littering and stuff, except they don't put up with it. So that's why it's such a clean city. Like, it's not necessarily that the people there are a lot cleaner than British people. They just don't put up with it. You know, they have constant street cleaning. They get rid of graffiti. You know, and don't get me wrong, I don't support Russia or anything. I'm just saying this is what they do. And, you know, if we paid more taxes to get, you know, a really clean London and Manchester, you know, maybe some more skyscrapers, you know, the B network's looking good. We can get a tube in Manchester. I'd vote for them. Except then, Zach Polanski wants to exit NATO. I do not really know what he's thinking with this proposition. I've no idea. This seems like the stupidest... I genuinely... Because with the drugs argument, I don't agree with it, but I understand the argument that they want freedom. They want people to be allowed to do what they want. People are going to take drugs, so why not let them take it in a safe environment where it can be taxed? I don't agree with that. I think legalizing all drugs will be problematic. But I understand the argument. I don't understand the argument for leaving NATO. I don't know why he said this. This is not a popular proposition. People don't agree with this. And disabling nuclear weapons. But actually, I might put Plaid Cymru. I'll put the Greens slightly ahead of Reform. I don't know, would I rather the Greens won than Reform? I'll put them slightly ahead for now. Okay, next up the SNP. The SNP, my least favourite party. They're going to go below the Conservatives. They are the most divisive party in the country because they actually want to split the United Kingdom. I don't know why anyone likes this party outside of Scotland. Don't get me wrong, in Scotland, I know exactly why people like them because they're a very good Scottish party. They put Scottish people first and they have their university policies about, you know, for example, in Scottish universities, they prioritise Scottish students. They have free public transport for those under 23. You know, they are a solid party and they are, you know, trying to improve Scotland. And Scotland is getting better. I've been to Scotland quite a bit. It is getting better. But they want to split the country. They want to exit the United Kingdom. And we can't put up with that. So no, they're going bottom of these. Next up, we've got Advance. Now, Advance are pretty irrelevant. I don't think they really exist. I think they've bonded with Restore, if I'm not wrong. But I'll put them. I'll put them there if they. I've never liked Advance as much as Restore, because Advance is basically Tommy Robinson's puppet, right? It has been, and the issue is Rupert Lowe is a lot more popular than Ben Habib. Ben Habib is not that charismatic of a speaker. Ben Habib, I don't know how to put it without just being really disrespectful to him, but he's not that popular. People don't know who he is. People know who Rupert Lowe is. Maybe not so many people know who Rupert Lowe is, but quite a lot of people know who Rupert Lowe is. Not that many people know who Ben Habib is. And Advance UK are kind of, I don't know, I've always just felt like they're really attached to Tommy Robinson. Like, Tommy Robinson basically is the lead. I mean, I know he's not the leader and he's not even part of it, but kind of Advance have been garnering this whole Tommy Robinson and all those YouTubers group. Whilst Restore is kind of Rupert Lowe's party. He wants people to know it's his party and they can support him. You know, for example, what's his name? Carl Benjamin is a big supporter of Restore Britain. And I'm assuming Tommy Robinson supports Restore Britain. I haven't checked, actually. But I don't think Advance UK exists anymore, so it doesn't really matter. Next up, we've got the Homeland. Now, the Homeland Party are an ethno-nationalist party, and they have no chance of winning, so they're going there. Generally speaking, the party's a bit of a joke. I'm not really sure why they're on this list, to be honest. But they are just a complete joke of party. They split up over LGBTQ stuff. I mean, it's nothing to do with them. I don't know what their plan is. I don't know very much about them, so they're going there. Okay, next up we've got the Liberal Democrats. Now, I'm going to put the Liberal Democrats at the bottom of B tier. I'll say what. I don't think if the Liberal Democrats win the next election, they'll ruin the country. To no extent. I think the Liberal Democrats do think that they're doing the best. And they do have very normal policies. I think if we have a Liberal Democrat government, basically nothing will change. The country might get marginally better. Like, maybe we'll give slightly more money to the NHS and we'll get a slightly better Europe trade deal. I know they love the EU. But generally, people say you can't name one reform policy. I can't name one Liberal Democrat policy. The Liberal Democrats, I'm not really sure what they stand for beyond Ed Davey going on water slides and photobombing the Conservatives. I mean, don't get me wrong. The Liberal Democrats trying to market themselves as just being a normal person's party. If you don't want the extremes of Restore or Green, which many people don't, then vote for the Liberal Democrats. You know, we'll make your life slightly better. And they've got 70 seats. They're very successful. And they're quite successful in my area as well. Not my constituency. I live in a Conservative that will be probably a Reform constituency. But the Liberal Democrats they're doing quite well. But they're not going to win the next election because no one really wants them to win. I don't think they're going to win, unfortunately. But they're not the worst party to win. I do think they have the best ideas in mind. Next up, we've got the Your Party, which, by the way, has a horrible logo. And this is their logo. I'll put the Your Party probably like there. I mean, the Your Party is a bit of a mess. Again, with all of these in these bottom two, they're kind of, I don't know how to put it. The Your Party are not going to win because they're such a mess of a party. They've tried to do collective leadership and it's not worked. It's just I don't want to call them communists because they're not communist, but they're just trying to do this whole sharing the campaign, you know, sharing the policies. And it's embarrassing because no one agrees with it. No one agrees with this stuff. Like, look at the Greens. The Greens is a one-man party. No one knows who Adrian Ramsey is. Or, I can't even remember the name of the person who ruled with Adrian Ramsey. Zach Polansky. Zach Polansky is the Green Party. No one can name one Green MP. People can name a Reform MP. People can name, I was about to say a Restore MP. People can't name any Green MPs. Because Green MPs are irrelevant. Zach Polansky is the Green Party right now. If Zach Polansky leaves the Green Party will probably go back down to what they are. And the Your Party completely had this with Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn is very famous, in politically speaking. I avoided saying popular because he's a very polarizing figure. But Jeremy Corbyn is very famous. A lot of people know who he is. And for that reason, this has great potential. Except it doesn't, because they're completely incompetent. Zara Sultana is really ambitious for someone who isn't that important. I don't know very much about her. I don't think many people know that much about her. And I don't really know why she's trying to force herself to be the leader of this party. And Corbyn should be the leader, because Corbyn's most popular. And they had their conference, which was a bit of a mess. They were calling each other Conrades, which is not the best sign. I think Zach Polansky may have done that once or twice. maybe not. I know that Zach Polanski does like to throw around the word fascist when describing, reform and restore, which obviously, there's some banter to an extent of it, of playing the extremes, because obviously if you're a hardcore leftist, you probably think Reform is a fascist party. I will tell you right now, Reform is not a fascist party in the same way that the Green Party are not a communist party. But yeah, there you go. That's the list. Restore an S, Plaid Cymru an A, and there you go.